Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an episode of Life Unpotted. Today, we have a special guest, Emily Chertow, who we will be speaking with, having conversation with, and really just hanging out and enjoying each other's company for this episode. We got to know Emily through mutual friends. Emily is in the community building space in New York City. She's most known for creating her event classes, journaling classes, which I have not had the privilege of taking a class quite yet, but as soon as I'm in New York, I will be doing so. Emily is just an amazing human. We've connected briefly, and we just love to talk all about feeling all the feels, experiencing life as it is, and just living life as joyous as we possibly can. So this conversation, we really don't have any direction for how it will go. We're just excited to hang out with another person who is also on this journey of following a passion, creating what it is that they love. And something that I will just get us started with this is that we were just chit-chatting before, and Emily mentioned for her to create means to actively heal. And that was something that I just very much resonated with because I feel as though what we're creating here with Life Unpotted is a direct result of actively healing. And I think that it's a beautiful way to put creating because ultimately, creating something, it can be stressful, it can be overwhelming, there can be a lot of judgments, constant assessing of where you're at. And I think this statement or this way to live life of just healing actively to create is a great reminder of why we're actually doing any of this in the first place. Why is it that we're actually venturing out to create something on our own that we care about? And it's grounding to remember that when it comes down to it, it's all about making our inner world expand and broaden because ultimately that's what's going to expand our overall world. And that's going to be what's brought out in every conversation we have with everyone. And just overall, our experiences will be deepened. And I'm just really excited for this conversation with Emily. And don't forget, Sophie is here as well. But I just wanted to give Emily just a second to introduce herself and just so happy to have you here.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. What a beautiful introduction. I want to keep talking about what creativity looks like tied to healing and what healing looks like tied to creativity. But yeah, I love how we discovered one another. I was so grateful. In the way that you reached out, it was very genuine, authentic, and we so quickly went beyond the surface, and that's the juicy, yummy stuff. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and this is the first couple of months of me building journaling classes full time. The last 5 years, I've been doing this on the side as a passion, a love, a space that I wanted to create and exist in. It's very fun. It's very overwhelming. And I feel like in the last 5 years, it's been such a unique experience in different ways I've been able to build it while also pursuing the other career work stuff that I love and I know I'm good at, which is community building and writing and holding space. So being able to put all of those pockets of who I am into journaling classes is really fun and is such a gift. But we are definitely in a transitional period where we're getting to figure it out one day at a time and giving myself permission to do it messy and not have all the answers.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting when we embark to create something, it's easy for us to want it to look a certain way. And I think if there's anything I've learned from creating Life Unpotted, and like we were talking about earlier, Emily, I was in the corporate world and making a massive switch into how can I learn to express myself and how hard and quite frankly jarring that really was to put such vulnerable and deep parts of myself and learn to how do I express that to other people, and not only how in the sense of how can I physically figure that out, the medium in which, is that a podcast, is that me writing, is that what does that look like, but also how do I get comfortable showing up as me? How do I get comfortable really being myself? And for me, that has been something that's been extremely difficult. It's something that honestly, I didn't even know how hard it was to express myself. And I was kind of shocked when I learned after going on a creative endeavor to find out that this is really, really, really hard. And not only is it hard, and kind of to echo the point were talking about earlier, it was painful to create. It's painful to express, and it's painful to build. And I'm curious if that's a sentiment that you resonate with. I think it probably is, given our conversation earlier, but would like to hear more about that and your experience with. You mentioned earlier you had a history in journalism, and then you're kind of building this side by side. And even going back to when you were 15, you were expressing yourself. And I guess, how has that journey been for you? How has it evolved? And maybe more present day, how has the experience been of creating this platform and space of journaling classes where so many people go to the space that you create so that they can connect with themselves? I know that it can be a very interesting journey to create such a vulnerable space as the creator, as the creative, because we're dealing with some real stuff, It's real emotions, it's real thoughts, it's people's lives, it's the deepest parts of our existence that maybe we don't get a chance to access in other times of our life. So just, I know I just asked you a few questions. I guess I'm just generally curious about that, about your experience with creating journaling classes, being given that it's such a deep and intimate experience to create it.
I love that. You just strung together a lot of things that sparked a lot of thoughts for me. But what's super present right now is I am experiencing some growing pains. And thank God. That means this is something that I care about and something that is about to be unlocked in a way that I I'm not sure what that might even look like yet. But I presently, in this day, the last couple of weeks, have had this constant knot in my stomach, feeling like there's always more I should be, could be, need to be doing. But I can't be anywhere but exactly where I am right now. And that's all I need to put my focus on. And I navigate and I grapple with my knowing that journaling classes, community, my brand can grow and will grow to be something more than I could ever imagine, but also navigating yucky self-esteem stuff, worthiness, value, questioning, will I meet my person if I keep on this track? Will I be able to provide for myself in the way that I hope, dream, and desire if this is what I'm doing? And those are all normal human thoughts. And so giving myself permission to be in them and feel them is really important to me. But this literal aching in my body that I've been feeling lately is growing pains. And that I trust that when I'm feeling these pains, that means I'm expanding, I'm evolving, I'm turning a corner, I'm about to experience something that is new and different and is uncomfortable. And I want to continue to try my best to be okay sitting in that discomfort.
I think you just hit on something very crucial of when you're creating something. It's like all of this self-esteem stuff comes up, and it's like the way I see it is it's like very much focused on assessing and like every moment. How am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? And what you led with of saying all I can be is where my feet are, that's how we actually make progress. That's how we actually get places. Because if we just go into that thought and get stuck into that thought of who am I to create this? Who am I to do this? Or how can I be doing this? We wouldn't be getting anywhere. And we think it's productive to like self-sabotage ourselves in that way. But this is where, going back to in order to create, I have to heal. Is that when you say growing pains that you're going through right now, it's like, okay, are these for journaling classes? Are these for personal growth? Or is there really no separation? If you are what you're creating, it's in this industry, in this space specifically, where it's so intimate and it truly is a piece of you, of what you're giving and what you're creating. It's like the growth that comes is not separate from what you're creating. It comes with you as a person. And, I can relate to growing pains, moving to Austin, changing things up. There's growing pains. And, sometimes if you're not even aware of those growing pains, that's like when it really slaps you, because you start to like see these things bubble up and other things around you. And then you start to get caught up in things. So I mean, just going back to like what you create in general, of creating space for people to literally journal and connect with themselves, is such an important facet that we need to have in our lives. Of just, it's so easy to get disconnected from ourselves. So I can understand if you're creating something that helps people connect with themselves. If you're not connecting with yourself, how can you be creating something
And
that
that's what I've been thinking about that a lot. Actually, was talking about it last night. Well, in general, in every journaling class, I truly, deeply believe that when we come together, we heal, and when we write together, we heal. And I'm so grateful to be able to hold that space and do that. Journaling classes was built off of something that saved my life, something that helped me. I have these tools that I know work for me, and I want to share it with as many people as I can because I care about it and I'm passionate about it. But as I've evolved this into my business, I've had to shift some of that. I am holding space for others. Where can I be held? I have to be held in other spaces. So last night I went to David Nabinski's podcast mixer, and my favorite writer, creative person, Mari Andrews, was there. It felt so good to show up in that space as Emily and to ask questions about my grief, about my healing, about life, and not have it be with the motives of, I want to share about journaling classes. I'm the founder of journaling classes. I didn't talk about journaling classes in that whole experience. And I need to exist in spaces where I can show up as Emily. That's it. Because journaling classes is so much of my fibers and my beings and what I love. I'm married to it. It's my baby. It's all the things. But it's not only who I am. There's so many other parts of me that not everyone gets to see. And I don't want everyone to see. And so when I get to show up in spaces for my healing, unrelated to journaling classes, that gives me space to be able to show up even better as the founder of journaling classes. And if I don't give myself permission to go do things that are detached from what I'm building, then my business isn't going to operate. It's not going to work. I have to show up in spaces that are safe for me just to be, and where I'm anonymous apart from my identity as who I am in journaling classes.
Well, it's really interesting because I think when we go to build something, we tend to forget all of the life experiences that have led us up to this point, that led us to be able to create what we're creating. And for me, it's like creating this podcast and getting so into it. And the podcast, it has been such a beautiful vehicle for expression. But I really relate to what you're saying recently, just realizing, but I have to keep living. I have to keep getting out there. And that's where joining a yoga studio, where I really resonate and connect with the people there, and trying to expand my life further, not just within Life Unpotted, because, and it's interesting because it doesn't have to do, it's not anything bad with what we're creating. I think sometimes it can feel like a very black and white thing of, oh, I too much of this or not enough of this. But I think, like anything in life, it's a holistic understanding of, we are not just one thing and we're constantly evolving. And of course, we're experiencing this too. As we're building anything in life, we are going to be growing. So of course there's going to be pivots. Of course there's going to be growing pains, because we're not meant to stay the same. And I think a lot of the times it's easy for us to want to hold on to what worked. It's easy for us to want to hold on to what got us off the ground, or maybe what was that first thing. And for me, it's interesting because, like, the podcast was really rooted out of pain. It was rooted out of going through really, really hard stuff in my life and not really knowing what to do. And Daisy and I created this because I was really struggling. I had just came out to my parents and was going through rejection. I was going through a lot of pain. And at the time, like, my life felt like it was just like complete roller coaster of spinning, and I couldn't really find my feet on the ground. And it feels like now that time has passed, and it's been about 2 years since we started the podcast. And coinciding with that, I am also healing the pain that was so active when I first started. I feel like I'm landing at a point now of, okay, it feels like my feet are on the ground. And in a way, that has allowed me to have the sense of clarity to look at Life Embodied and see, the origination of what I've created with Life Unpotted and everything that we do, it started from all that pain. But that doesn't, and that's okay. And that's beautiful. And that's always going to be there too, because those experiences will always be a part of me. And I'm not trying to get rid of them. But at the same time, this capacity has opened up for I'm ready to expand my being and expand my life. And I have more room now for more things to be in my life. So it makes complete sense. Like you're mentioning growing pains and kind of like not really knowing what to do and needing to make sure like you're having time for Emily and that you're filling your own needs. And I feel like it's funny because we're always kind of surprised when that happens. Like we always think that like we're going to reach a point where everything's good. But it feels like on this journey of life, like we're going to have to keep expanding and reinventing things and adding new things and subtracting things. And I just think it's so important to have compassion towards ourselves and to go with that with grace and with ease of recognizing that we're doing the best that we can. And there is no right way to do any of this. And what matters is that we're having fun. And I think as soon as you stop having fun when you're creating something, it's really important. I've learned to come back to yourself and say, okay, wait, have I lost myself in this? Because even if something started from the most genuine part of you, it's easy for us to get so disentangled with, when we talked to you before the chat, you're untangling, I think, your headphones or your necklace. And that word tangles and untangling resonates a lot because I feel like this journey is really one in which we're constantly doing that. We're untangling everything in our life and we're trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. And I just think that it's a confusing process, but it's also a beautiful process because it allows us to continue to grow. And I love that there's this quote I saw, I think on Pinterest or something, and it was this girl and she was like, she had like flowers growing out of her hair and it was like, I changed. And the person next to her or something was like, you change. And she's like, aren't we meant to? So I think it's just to echo that, not getting caught up on staying the same and being okay with making changes and being okay with making shifts.
Yeah, it would be so cruel and unfair to box ourselves in. And I think my pain today, my joy today is different than what it was 4 years ago. And that's great. Time heals. Actively working on your healing heals. And so, Sophie, like when you were coming out to your parents or your family, that season of your being and the things you're addressing and that version of you is different maybe than how you're showing up today. And what a gift. It's a gift to get to evolve and to shift things that we're focusing on and prioritizing. It's meant to. And I love that we get to have these different seasons where our focus, our energy, even who we surround ourselves and how we spend our time looks different.
Yeah. And I think this conversation is really refreshing, or maybe it's, Emily, the way that you lead your life, or the way that I've perceived you to lead your life, the way you talk about your life, is that you said that you live hard. You very much feel. And I think that, for so much of like my life, I've definitely judged myself for having feelings. And I think we all do. We all judge ourselves for having feelings. But it feels like a novel idea. And I say this seriously, to say, well, what if we just take care of our emotions and put them at the forefront? And I know there's been so many iterations for me where I've been like, oh, I'm going to take care of my emotions. But it's like, really, you're just finding new ways to judge them, or to feel like you're spiraling, or just not actually taking care of them. And I think it's just a matter of being able to have them, hold them, embrace them, and say, these are part of me and that's okay.
Yeah, I love that, Daisy. I do live hard, and something that came up for me when you were sharing that is my mom and I have a really good relationship, but for a lot of my life, she protected me from a lot of things, which didn't allow me to fully experience the pain I needed to feel to get to the other side. And I'm at a place where I welcome those. Of course, like sometimes I'm like, yo, universe, knock it off. Like, give me a breather. But when it does happen and when things are really challenging, I'm like, bring it on. I got this. I'm never given more than I can handle. I will always be able to put one foot in another and try my best, like you said, Sophie, and trust that this pain I'm feeling is a lived experience that will teach me something. I will be better for it. I get to navigate it I get to be sad, angry, confused. And then on the other side, I'm going to feel joy and bliss and serenity again. I will feel joy again. And not only will I feel joy again, but I can also be sad and happy at the same time.
And I think that's it, right? It's like we forget that we're never going to feel what we're feeling forever. And it's kind of funny how like we're always like kind of like surprised of like, oh my God, I'm going through this, or this is really hard, or this is really challenging. And something that Daisy and I have been talking about recently is like this analogy of like life being like a good book or a good movie, and the importance of a plot whenever in any sort of book or any sort of movie. And remembering that so too is our lives. Our lives are moment to moment to moment. We're born and then we die. And there's a bunch of chunk of time in between all of that. And I think that when we don't allow ourselves to go through the difficult experiences, and we don't allow ourselves to go through challenges, and we try to stay safe and we try to stay comfortable, we don't allow ourselves to get to the other side of the profound growth and bliss and serenity. And not just that, but love. Like when you think about like Emily, like what led you to lead journaling classes, I'm imagine experiences that you have experienced that has allowed you to tap into so much love that you now feel like you can hold that space for other people. And I see how choosing to live is really hard because it requires us to feel. And feeling, which is so interesting, how feeling seems to be something that is just, it is so innate, but it feels like the way we grew up, it was everything far from the truth of what we were experiencing. And that's why when we choose to heal and we choose to go down these paths and the really intense emotions are coming up, or we're going through memories from childhood or from earlier in our life, it's jarring
Mm-hmm.
because we're like, where did that come from? And I just think that to whoever's listening and to you guys, just a reminder, and to myself, of the importance of remembering that nothing lasts forever. And even when you're going through the hardest of times in your life, that if you let yourself go through it, you will come out to the other side. And that is where, and I don't know for you, Emily, but for me, like that's where the creative ideas come. That's where the inspiration comes. When you allow yourself, and like we said, creating is healing.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be a big theme of this conversation. And this conversation feels so timely right now. I can't even explain. Like it feels like this conversation was meant to happen like at this moment, which is interesting because this conversation got pushed a few times. And I don't know. It just feels like this is the time right now.
Of course, we've landed here. Of course, we're here in this moment at this time. And again, thanks for your graces. I had to knock those things a few times, but probably some of the stuff I would be saying would be different if it were a few weeks ago. So I'm grateful for that. And Sophie, something that came up as you're saying that whole beautiful thread was, it's just this reminder that I'm not afraid to feel. And I'm not afraid to feel, but also acknowledging that I don't have to feel everything at one time. There's been seasons where something comes up for me and I know I don't have capacity to address it right now. And I'm allowed to set it to the side. I'm allowed to pin it. I'm allowed to know it's there, giving it kindness and grace, and knowing that it's going to have to get picked up sometime again soon if I want to keep flowing and working through it. But there are times where, especially with my journey and healing and understanding some things that I need to understand, I'm focusing right now on my family issues. I cannot focus on my self-esteem and body issues. Sometimes they cannot be done at the same time. And my unlearning of perfectionism and workaholism, to think I can't do it all at once, is a tough pill to swallow. Because especially as a person that's living so hard, I'm like, let's go. Like, let's just take it all on. But I'm allowed to take my time. And I'm allowed to pick things up when I need to and put them down when I have to. And unfortunately, they're not going anywhere. That shit I need to address is always going to travel with me no matter where I go. And so, yeah, I'm going to have to pick it up again sometime. And it's a gift to be able to pick it up and put it back down as needed.
Well, we have our whole lifetime
Right.
to work through these things, like it's funny because there was truly periods of my life where I thought things will get to a place and then we'll stay the same. And maybe that's because the way I was brought up through the school system and just like college and all this stuff, it felt very rigid. And it's like life is anything but rigid. We're never going to stop going through something. And I don't know if just like opening up the book of like actually taking accountability and healing emotions reveals that there's constantly so much stuff. I think in the past I probably would say, oh, like everything's fine, like, things are great. And it's like things are never things are never that simple is what I'm learning. Things are always complicated. And going back to this virtue of like living hard, of living really hard, it's like it's gonna mean that you have to feel really hard too. It's gonna mean that you have to take accountability for these real feelings that come up all the time. And they do come up all the time as soon as you start to acknowledge them. And it's an interesting place to land, to exist within, because your whole world broadens when you take accountability for your feelings, when you allow yourself to actually feel your feelings instead of projecting them onto, the smaller things that happen in life, like being late or, not getting the right gift for someone, these little things that we know don't actually matter. It allows you to see what really does matter, but that also means you have to feel things really hard. You have to feel things for what they are. And it feels like every day feels so long. Every single day feels full. And that's not always positive in my experience. Sometimes it's full of really difficult things. And other times it's just full of really, really beautiful things that are very exciting. And to watch the change of that from where I was 5 years ago to now, it's like, it's a matter of connection to the self. It's like the more you allow yourself to feel, the more connected to yourself you get to be. Like it's like that's the prize we get to reap. And it's like the more connected we are to ourselves, the more we get to actually live. And what a journey it is to actually get to live. And I think that almost sounds like, obviously we all get to live, but that's the nuance is like things are never as simple as they appear to be.
Yeah.
Things are never that simple, especially when it comes to emotions. And I was at this meditation this morning and there was this sound that was happening. And it was like this woman's voice came over the vocals. And it was really interesting. She was like, our emotions are what connect us to the unseen world. Feeling our emotions are what connect us to, what is really here that we can't actually see. It's really just a feeling state. And to me, that was so interesting to hear because when we live in a state of just the logical brain of just thinking, like I see the table and this is a table, I'm like, well, how does this table make me feel? And that is kind of a silly example. But it's like once we access this state of feeling, it's like our whole world opens up to things that are more than just the physical world. And that is where we tap into things like connection, community, love.
I love that, Daisy. I was actually going to bring up relationships as you were flowing in that. It's interesting because I'm so open to feeling my feelings most of the time. And it's been unique to navigate in my friendships and family because sometimes when I feel them, people are scared. People are like, are you okay? And sometimes I'm not okay, but I know I'm going to be. And I I'm really grateful for the community and the connections I have where I can show up being like, I'm here, but I'm really suffering today. Or I'm here and I'm really sad, so I'm going to be a little bit more silent. Or I'm sorry, I don't have room. I have to cancel lunch today. The people that have understanding, grace, acceptance, and love for that, all of my beings, all of my states of what I am, I'm really grateful for. And I'm also not afraid to, especially in a setting where I'm unlearning a corporate world and I'm building the life that I want, I have been taking back my power where it's like, hey, just a heads up, I'm really excited for our conversation, but I'm having a really rough day and I wanted to let you know. If you'd like to reschedule, I'm happy to do that. We can do that. We're human beings. But society and the corporate space has taught us that that's frowned upon. And I'm so grateful to be in a community of people that often are also feeling their feelings and are open to talking about them and respecting one another in the process of them, knowing we all have different lens and perspectives and walks of life. And when we can connect, when we hold space, I truly believe vulnerability makes room for connection. And when we're vulnerable with others, we have room to dig a bit deeper or to look at things in a different way. And so, as we navigate our life, have lived experiences, feel the things that we need to feel and process, we get to do that with other people if we want to. I think we're all seeking connection and we're all deserving and worthy of it. But people cannot read our mind. So sometimes you have to share parts of yourself for them to understand where you're at.
Yeah, I think relationships, so that was a really, really interesting way to tie that together, because it's like you show up as you, and if other people aren't showing up or they're being true to their feelings, there's going to be a discrepancy. There's going to be something that is different in the way that you exist in this world. And then living in a world that is, I know you live in New York and we moved from New York, and like it is kind of like, don't worry about your feelings. Let's just get something done. Let's create something. And that's not every community, but like that was kind of the overarching, it's, the financial hub of the world. So let's make money despite any other thing happening. Let's not worry about anything else. Let's totally just focus on making more money. And I feel like that is really a lens that I've lived in for so long, or, whether it's money or whether it's just achievement or whether it's just seeking value or validation or whatever it may be. Entering this world where people do really acknowledge that, yep, I'm feeling something, you're feeling something, like that has been taboo. I feel like in the world where I've came from, when in reality everyone really could benefit from that. Everyone could, because we, like you said, we're humans, we're all just here, and these are the rules that we've made up, and we hold each other accountable to it, and we kind of police each other on what's allowed and what's not. And I think the corporate structure is a good example of that. And I've heard all types of stuff about bringing empathy to work, but the reality is it's really scary. So when you enter into a space that's a little different, that, has these things at the forefront, it allows for more space to show up differently, to show up as your true self. And firsthand, I can just see, I don't know if you're familiar with this, Emily, but I went to this thing called an authentic relating class. Maybe some fun research for you to do if you're interested, because it's a community-based sector. But they have a pretty big niche community in Austin. And basically the concept is that it is like it's all about being vulnerable with a group of people. But there's like some certain rules you follow, but basically it's like it involves eye contact, sitting in front of someone, and also noting, how am I feeling? I'm noticing this, or I'm noticing this about you, I'm noticing this. So it really cultivates this space of, I'm going to make eye contact with you for an extended period of time, a stranger. And then if I feel unsafe, I can shut my eyes, and then I'm going to comment on things. So it's like this bridge that creates space for you to show up authentically as you are, and to feel fully safe in your body. And when I say I had the experience of walking in late to one of these classes, sitting with the instructor who was a guy who's maybe a few years older than me, and having to say, I have to sit in front of him with my eyes open for 8 minutes, that was terrifying for me. So I shut my eyes, and afterwards I had this beautiful experience that allowed me, he allowed me the space to take up the space that I needed by shutting my eyes. And he wasn't mad at me, based off what my preconceived notions would have told me. It actually allowed me to be in my body and to be really present and really open with people. And the difference between me walking in, wanting to walk out a minute into it, and then 15 minutes into the class, we're like playing charades and like just doing silly stuff. Like I was a different person because I allowed myself to be in my body, because I felt safe, I felt held, and I felt like I was allowed to be myself. So just on the topic of community spaces and how it's one thing to heal on our own, it's a whole other ballgame to heal around others, to be reminded that we can make these shifts in ourselves. And that was really my biggest experience I think I've had with like an intimate community. And I just wanted to share that with you, because I'm sure you see overlaps with what you do.
Yeah, I love that, Daisy. I think, journaling is something typically that's done very privately. No one ever will see your journal, hear what you think or thought. And I always acknowledge, like, what you experience at a journaling class, this is unique. You're writing at a picnic table, you're in a circle with other people doing something in the act of self-care for yourself, all at the same time. What a privilege. And then the space of like, oh, now maybe we're going to open up and share what you've journaled about, what's on your heart, what's on your mind. That takes it to the next level. That's what makes my workshop so special, the way I hold space for connection and sharing and community. We're not just showing up and journaling, talking about how we're thinking, feeling. We're really peeling back some layers. And sometimes in a deep way, sometimes in a very playful way, and connecting. And it's again with this emphasis of like making the world less lonely. As much as I want to say we all have original thoughts, it's very true that something that you probably got on the page, someone else also got down on the page. And so being able to hold space to share about that and be like, wait, me too? I'm not alone in that thought and feeling is such a gift and is so unique. But I loved the permission that your teacher gave you of you can close your eyes or keep them open. And the same goes for journaling classes. There's always an invitation to share. And something I've learned in my adulthood the last couple of years is, especially in my womanhood, is an invitation is something I don't have to accept. Actually, something very powerful for me not to accept. So maybe in a journaling class, someone just wants to sit in their solitude and be at peace, being amongst other people, doing something for themselves, and they don't share at all. Perfect. Love that. But maybe someone wants to like stand up and do a jig and a dance and a cartwheel as they're reading their journal prompt. And their answer, also perfect. We have room for people to show up however they want in this space. And I think also, that is why it's built such authentic community and has kept people coming back.
Did that come natural to you at first? Like being able to cultivate a space and knowing how to, you have a group of people and some people are going to feel really nervous and not want to share, and other people will. How was that experience for you to get to the point where you're able to hold that space, and like what have you learned from holding that space with so many different people time after time again? I can imagine that's been a really expansive experience for you.
Yeah, beyond expansive. But something that I do want to just say and I want to own is I think facilitating and holding space is one of my superpowers. It is not something I took a class on. It's not something someone taught me. It is part of my fibers and who I am as a human being. And it has come very naturally. And to be able to own that feels uncomfortable. Um, and of course, I've grown better as I've done it more. And I'm always talking to therapists and instructors. And
Why is that uncomfortable to own that? I'm just curious.
my recovering people pleasing and my fear of how other people will view me. But when I step into the certainty of who I am, I'm like, absolutely, I know I'm a great facilitator. I was put on this earth to bring people together.
Was that something that you've had that took you time to really own, of like, this is, I can do this? Like, did you have insecurities that you had to work through to be able to get to a place where you can confidently say, I was I am confident in my ability to hold space to people, hold
Yeah,
space for
I
people?
I never had to work through insecurities of if I should and how to, but I did have to work through insecurities of like, of course I'm good at this. And yeah, so I have had to address that in different unique ways. But that said, as I'm here being like, this is what I'm meant to be doing, I am so in alignment. This is what my higher power put me on the universe to be doing. I have learned a lot and it's been so expansive, and I have become a better host. I've become a better facilitator. And it does overwhelm me sometimes when people ask me that question of like, how are you doing this? How are you holding space? How are you hosting events? I have no playbook for that, unfortunately. I wish I did. I have nuggets, I have tips and tricks, and I've helped other people host different things. That's one of the things I do in my work is host coaching and host training, event training. But I will say someone I learned a lot from was from my mother because of how she loved, how she loves. For example, like I look to my left and here's a candy dish. I look to my right and here's a burning candle. Those things were always in my home. And those are things that when people show up in my home and in my space, it makes them feel safe. And the way my mother loves me, and the way that my mother allows me to fully be myself and to feel my feelings is why I am the way that I am. And I don't know if that can be taught.
That's so beautiful, and I think that feeling safe in a space, something for me has been scary to open up and to express. And especially, we just got back from a retreat, being with a bunch of people you don't know. And even though there's times where I know I'm everyone and I know I'm connected to everyone, and I know we have really similar experiences, but that doesn't mean it's not really hard to sit there and to feel safe showing yourself when we go about this world and we've gotten rejected and we've gotten hurt and we've been isolated and we've have felt everything but love. And I think that's a really beautiful sentiment, because I think that a lot of times we're talking about things our parents fucked up with. And I think it's really refreshing to hear you mention how your relationship with your mom, or your mom in her own being, helped you learn how to hold space for yourself and hold space for other people. And to be able to pass that on through a community space is so impactful, because I think it's rare to be able to find a space like that where you can feel held. And from my friend Erica, when she went to your classes, she was just like, I need to go back. And I think that's where, to echo, I can't explain how I'm holding space. I can't explain this. And that's because we can't explain a lot of these things, these experiences that are kind of beyond us. They are the depths of this experience where we are feeling connected and we're feeling love. It's not something you're going to find logically drawn out. This is how you hold space. And maybe we can say, okay, make the home cozy, make it like this, but it's a feeling state. And I think ultimately when we show up as our true selves, that's felt. And that's something I felt from looking at your social media and looking at your content, was just like, I could feel you just being you. And I think that I say that with like complete love and truth, because that's a really, really beautiful feeling to feel when someone's being their full self and not trying to change themselves, and just showing up and owning every fiber of their body. So getting emotional as I say that, because it's that's been something that's been really hard for me to do, and I see how hard it is for so many people to do as well. So the work that you've done to be yourself it's really felt. And just generally, I want to thank you for that, because it goes a really long way in helping myself and others feel like they're not alone, and they too can discover what is the way that they can express themselves and what is the way that they can be themselves. And that probably looks different because we're all so different, but what remains the same is truth, and truth is something that you can feel. And I'm sure that that is something that is embodied in the spaces and classes that you hold.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for all of those words. I'm receiving all of them. I do. It is interesting. Well, for one thing, people aren't always going to remember what I say, but they will always remember how I've made them feel. And so all I can do, even in that, is to just try to show up as best as I can, being who I am. And I truly believe I've been given the support, love, and tools to be able to show up simply myself. And unfortunately, not everyone's going to like that. I have learned that that's okay. I actually, like, I'm a recovering people pleaser. So, but as I show up myself, I am not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And I've grown to not want to be. But little Emily, ooh, I have always been sharing authentically, I think, to myself. And, you guys found me on it maybe a year ago. I've been sharing online for a long time. I don't have some crazy following, but I share as a way of creativity, expression, connection, helping me not feel alone. But little Emily has been so hurt along the way because she's done that. And there has been people that have been so mean to me. I have gotten death threats. I have gotten horrible phone calls, prank calls, letters. I have caught people gossiping. I have caught people saying very unkind, mean things about me. It sucks. It's impacted me. But what I've grown to realize is, one, not everyone's going to like me. Yeah, there are things, and there probably are times where, I get annoyed at myself. I imagine other people do too. And that's okay. But the way especially the mean people have said things or have shared things with me, it's actually simply a projection of how they feel about themselves. Maybe that's what I have to tell myself to keep going on through my day. But anyone that would say some of the shit that they have said to me, it is not about me. It is all about them. And it's a hard pill to swallow. Receiving hate. I mean, there's so many bullies on the internet. There's so many trolls. Receiving hate sucks and it does impact you. I can't deny that. But when people say things that are so mean, it's just about how they feel with themselves.
I think it could be really uncomfortable to see people be true to themselves. And this is something I've reflected on just on this journey of like making really big shifts and changing the groups of people that I hang out with and going towards maybe more circles that in the past I would have judged of, oh, those people, they look differently and they're dressing differently. And exactly every single time, like we view the world through our own mind. So when we're viewing the world through fear and through insecurities, anyone that threatens us, anyone that is being authentic is going to trigger the shit out of us. And I've seen this happen to myself. Oh, I feel annoyed. That person just rubs me the wrong way. And I've seen how, like, ultimately that's just pain and that's just hurt that, like, you feel you need to exert a level of control onto somebody because you need to stop it. Like, anything you can do to stop that because it's maybe a way that you learn to protect yourself, to project onto others. And that's because, a lot of people don't learn how to take accountability for their emotions. And it's interesting, like, of course that's going to be hurtful. Of course that's going to be hurtful. And at the same time, it's just so interesting because people, there's always going to be resistance, there's always going to be hate, there's always going to be fear. That's just a full spectrum of emotions are always going to exist, but they don't have to mean anything about you. And I think getting to a point for me, like overcoming self-judgment of how are people going to view me? Oh, because I have a girlfriend, I'm in a same-sex relationship. That was a huge one. And you see everything that goes on in the world with people who are queer or people who are in a same-sex relationship. And as I've expanded my mind so expansively through the use of psychedelics and through all these tools and through healing, I see that's a whole load of bullshit. We're all in these bodies that will decompose into the ground one day. We're all come out of the earth and go back into the earth. And everyone is just another version of myself. And I think sometimes it can be helpful to see yourself in that hate that people comment on you of, okay, they're hurt. And it doesn't excuse what they're saying, but at least it gives me an understanding of it has nothing to do with me. They're just trying to find a way to feel better.
Totally. And I love that. And so there's like two pockets of this. It's like there's these mean people that are saying really cruel, unkind things. Okay, they're hurt. But then I have I'm human. There's people that annoy me. There's people I don't like. But when that happens, I'm like, who does that remind me of? What part of myself is that in me? Why is that activating something for me? Why am I triggered? And looking at that and not judging it. And then on the flip side, again, back to these people that aren't my vibe, which is okay. I feel so grateful to now, and you guys too, like to be in a space where I create community for people that want to show up with me. The people that have been mean to me, they're not coming to a journaling class. They're not coming to these community events that also have shared interests with me. Maybe they are, but I'm not going to cross paths with them anymore because I've released so much of that. And I get to live my life in the way that I want to now. And a big part of that is creating spaces that I'd want to exist in and that I needed when I was younger. I needed journaling classes. I needed a safe space to exist and be fully myself. And so I give permission to everyone to show up fully themselves in journaling classes. There might be things I say in a workshop not everyone's going to like or agree with. That's okay. Take what you like, leave the rest. But now I get to exist in spaces that my bullies aren't. Actually, they're not allowed in anymore. And they have no interest in being at anyway.
It's an experience when you put yourself out there in a vulnerable way. And of course, there's going to be those who take that and they're so grateful for it. There's going to be others who misuse that. and abuse that because, for whatever reason that makes them feel better. But I think when you're putting yourself out there like that as a community facilitator for things that are quite vulnerable, there's also a level of it where people, just because you're putting yourself out there, think that that means that they can say things about you, they can use you as X, Y, and Z. But it's like the ultimate lesson is that no matter who maybe I'm looking to as a resource, maybe someone I'm looking to because I admire them or because I'm misplacing my own anger and like putting them down. It's like no matter what it is that you're doing, it's like the ultimate lesson is that you can't look to anyone else to save you. Ultimately, only you can save yourself. And, especially I'm sure you've seen this being a community facilitator, is that you can't save anyone else either. Like you're not trying to save anyone else. You're doing this for yourself. You're doing this for your younger self. And everyone who comes is also doing it for their younger self. And, I think looking to others to save you is something that is easy to be done because we don't want to have to believe that we have to save ourselves because it's really hard. But it is when we believe that we are the only ones that can help ourselves, that can take accountability for ourselves. If that's where, for a matter of fact, the real work is done, the real changes are made, and the real life is lived. Because it's ugly sometimes, it's dark, it's scary, but those exact experiences are what pave for the effervescence and the lightness and the joy and the love. It's every time. You can't have beauty without pain. Pain in ways is beautiful because it allows for you to have bliss and connection and my oh my. It is just that. And I think that being able to witness that for a living, it's challenging, but also it's beautiful. It's something that you get to choose to do. And that's the thing. You also choose. You were saying earlier in the conversation that it feels good to go to things and just show up as Emily. And that's like an important lesson of when you are creating something that is so inherent to who you are more than just what you are creating. And like that is just something that I really resonate with because it's easy to think that you have to be a part of this thing that is just a box of who you think you have to be because people want this from you. And this is all just ideas that you've created. But ultimately, there's just nothing better than allowing ourselves to be ourselves. And with that, we continue to heal and we continue to create. And if that's how we get to live our life, like that is just expansive, expansive, expansive. And to do that with others is just a beautiful experience. And I'm just so grateful to have had you on the conversation today. I've admired you from afar for a while, so I've just been really pumped to get to talk to you and hopefully blossom a friendship from here.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you both. I love this conversation. And I love how we like really open the hood. Like, like we are just, and there's so much more to it, but the way we get to choose to show up is such a gift. And I'm grateful that we've crossed paths and like, this is the first, I'm sure, of many other beautiful conversations. So thank you again for having me and just letting the conversation flow so naturally.
Do you want to let the listeners know where they can find you, your information, maybe a little more about journaling classes, anything you have coming up? I know we got the growing pains, but
We got
I
the
know
growing pains, but we also have 20 events a month. So we're good.
20
Yeah.
events. That would definitely
There's,
cost me growth.
yeah, journaling. On Instagram, it's journaling classes. I don't know how I snagged that at, but it's literally journaling classes, like at journaling classes. I also share a lot on my personal Instagram. I have an amazing monthly email list where I send non-spammy but very cozy, cute, colorful emails that have prompts, happenings, thoughts, feelings, all the things. I have a bunch of workshops coming up in New York City, a few virtually online, and I'm always open to private or corporate sessions, whether that be journaling classes, and I also do florals. I also do different elements of spaces where we get to connect and gather with our hands. And all of that can be on Instagram. I always love hearing from people. So if there's a DM or a thought you want to share, let me know. Feel free to respond to my stories. The most consistent thing in my life has been mindful mornings. They're every other Wednesday for 30 minutes. They're They're free. We share a few prompts. We write, we connect in community, and they're really beautiful. And it's a great space for you to kind of put your toe into the journaling classes community. But as I make this my full-time thing, there's lots of other things that are going to stem and grow and expand from this. So I'm excited for what is to come and happy to have people along for the ride and invite you in whenever you're ready or not. We got room for you.
That's amazing, Emily. I'm really excited to watch your journey and watch you express more of yourself and watch the journey go like this and all the different waves of life, because that's what it's about, right? Just riding the wave, dancing through it all, and continuing to learn how to show up as us, and understanding that that's something that might constantly be changing and that there's never one right way. So really appreciate you being here. It was really awesome to chat with you. I'm really excited to continue to blossom this friendship, to eventually meet you in person when we come back and visit New York or whenever you're in Austin. And excited for you. So thanks for chatting. Thanks for flowing with us. And we really appreciate your presence and your openness and your vulnerability. So thank you, Emily. And we'll certainly chat again soon.
Yay. Thank you both. So grateful.